in hospitals throughout the world. Thank you. Thank you for coming to hear me speak. It's kindness and generosity that I see in your faces today. And we are here for a very good reason. We are here because of the nurses. What can I say? But in 1861, hostilities erupted at Fort Sumter, and our President Lincoln, Father Abraham, summoned our men and our boys to fight, our boys in blue. I didn't know what exactly I would do. I was a wife and a mother in Philadelphia. My husband, Joshua Husband, was an esteemed lawyer at the Philadelphia bar. I saw him in parlors prepare his cases, pleading for various criminals or individuals. So I could cook, I could sew, I could organize a household. What better thing to do than to be a nurse? Well, when my boys signed up, my boys in blue, my sons, I would give freely to save the Union. 'Tis our patriotic duty in our family. I would not have them die in a filthy army camp someplace. You know how hard it is to bathe, to get boys to bathe? Well, that's how it was. So I signed up to go on a transport from Philadelphia all the way to Harrison Landing on the Peninsula Campaign, that failed campaign of General McClellan. What can I say? Who in their right mind would send thousands of men and boys into a swamp to camp, and then to fight, then to get wounded and bloody, and then to sit in the mud and get gangrene or typhoid? I saw on those transports hundreds of my boys in blue, not my sons, not my boys in blue, but my boys in blue, my soldiers, writhing in pain and in misery. And we had nothing. Shortages, shortages, shortages. No bandages, nothing. No quinine for malaria. Typhoid. I saw their eyes hollow as they withered away before me. And so I decided to be composed and kind and gentle, to have mercy and compassion. What good is kindness when you cannot give it with all of your heart? So that first time, after thousands of times that my heart broke in these long years of the Civil War, I gave my heart. And then I think that's when I acquired what you call a nom de guerre. The soldiers called me Mother Husband. Mother Husband. Oh, it was humorous. And I smiled. Everywhere I went, I smiled. I lended a hand. I turned a soldier. I saved one from bleeding by making a tourniquet. I rolled bandages. I sewed. I cooked. I cleaned. I kept them as clean as possible on the transports, back and forth. And then we left the peninsula. Well, the next time, I resolved myself to be the master quartermaster of supplies and amass supplies for General Pope's army for the Second Battle of Bull Run. That would be August of 1862. And there, I couldn't get a pass. My sister nurse, Clara Barton, who we knew of very well, we were so proud of her, she got a pass. And she was at Antietam, right at the field hospital, and that's where I wanted to be. But it was not my fate. I would find my true path. I truly would. It was not my fate. I went over to Smoketown Hospital. But that would be after the Battle of Antietam. You know, it takes months for a soldier to heal, months for an amputated limb to close up, and for a soldier to finally learn how to walk or handle himself without an arm or a hand. Months for the soldier to recuperate and convalesce. Months away from his loved ones, his heart broken from the carnage. So we gave our hearts. And when we do this, we would become exhausted ourselves. Well, Dorothy Dix, the superintendent of nurses with the U.S. Sanitary Commission in Washington, D.C., called me up because she heard about what I did at Peninsula and what I did for General Pope's supplies. And she called me to Baltimore to head up a hospital. And I did, gladly. I served I felt it was my duty, and I had faith in what we were doing. We were doing this for our boys in blue, because my boys were there out in the field, and I did not want them to suffer, so I would not have some other mother's boys suffering as they fought for the Union and for the Republic. So, 2 months, the poor matron before me was exhausted and had to go home to rest. We were not paid, you understand. This was voluntary. My next assignment was with Dorothy, was at Smoketown Hospital, well after the Battle of Antietam. Now, Smoketown Hospital was a 2 days walk from the battlefield. So we saw one day a soldier coming in, hanging on the butt of his rifle, limping. He had been shot through his side and had a massive wound. The field hospital doctor had left him for dead, but the nurse at the field hospital said, no, you get yourself up and you get to the hospital. You walk, you'll see the ambulance is going in a direction. You'll also see the buzzards and the crows. So we did, and we treated him. Now, Dorothy Dix was very much impressed with my sense of organization, and that comes from all that church work I do. You know what you do when you join a church. You're baking cookies, you're cooking, you're cleaning, you're pitching in, you're running with a team, you're talking and chatting, and you get the stuff done with what little you have. And that's how it was nursing. Oh, I do believe I hear the call of an ambulance. These were tough times. Now, I really agree with Florence Nightingale. Hoop skirts are worthless in a hospital. And I have heard rumors from the nurses in Washington, D.C., at Georgetown Hospital, that a lady came in with a hoop skirt, and her skirt hooked on the bedstead of a soldier, and she tugged it, and she jostled him, and he bled out and died. Now, corsets are another thing. They're a necessary evil for a lady. So we'll have to just accept the situation. But really what a nurse needs is an apron. An apron with pockets. Pockets with lots of little trinkets and things, games and toys, to keep the men and boys from the drink and from gambling with cards. And then too, this really helps. My little hymnal. Now, I have faith. I have faith in the care that I give. I have faith in my boys in blue that they will be brave on the battlefield. And I have faith in my nurses, the head surgeon, and Dorothy Dix that we are doing the right thing and the good thing. And sometimes our boys in blue need help. They need support. And they ask, can you sing me a hymn? So I just open up my little book and I sing a hymn. I'm not very good at that, so I won't sing now. But anyway, or I say a prayer or a poem, something that uplifts their spirits. This is what Florence Nightingale said. Yes, you need to keep the soldiers warm and dry and comfortable and boost them a little bit with spirits, like brandy. We would get cases in from some northern Massachusetts town. The ladies of Lowell or the ladies of Boston get together, commandeer those cases into wagons, hire 2 people, one to drive and one with pistols at his hips, to safeguard the supply. And they bring that stuff down to us. We would carefully guard over it. But it was medicine. Medicine. Now, I really had a keen eye for detail and organization. The head surgeons liked me, but the nurses liked me as well, because we got along. I knew that even though they weren't as skilled as I was, that their hearts were in the right place. And their heart was where my heart was. And so we bonded together. We unified. We were sister nurses. And it is truly, truly awesome and wonderful. In awe, I mean, of what we can do as human beings when we are kind, when we are compassionate, when we are strong, when we are calm, when we are merciful. Now, my heart broke many times at Smoketown and at Letterman Camp after Gettysburg. I didn't need to see the battles, but the rumors came in. I saw nurses handling soldiers day in and day out for months on end, turning them over. I saw orderlies carrying in their heavy charges day in and day out into the night. I saw surgeons working by candlelight day in and day out and saving lives, hundreds of lives, thousands of lives, all over this world. The technology, the warfare that we use was so far advanced, so far beyond what we would ever understand. But our methods of medicine were so far behind that we were doing catch-up. And the nurses, they were there to fill in that gap, to clean up the blood, to peel away the crusty, muddy clothing from the wound, open up the leg, and then clean the wound so the surgeon could see what he would need to do, being careful not to come in contact with gangrene. So many of our sisters died of typhoid, or pneumonia, or tuberculosis, or gangrene. And yet, we loved what we did. We were together. We were unified in this effort. What more beautiful and joyous thing. Truly, I felt as if the Lord were with me, that I had an angel with me every time I worked with a soldier. Now, the next time that my heart broke was at Brandy Station in Virginia. There were a group of soldiers who had mutinied against their officers, but I felt that they were innocent. And this was my one true path. Do you know what it's like to find your purpose, your path in life? Do you know what that's like? How wondrous and beautiful it is? It is almost as if the Lord tells you. It's a calling. I looked into the eyes of that soldier, and I asked him to tell me his story. And he said he did this and that and this, but it didn't matter, because I saw in his eyes that he was innocent. So I resolved, in my moral conscience, I could not let this injustice happen in the camps. I wrote a letter to his commander, asking for clemency. Dare I, a woman, a nurse? I did. Again, I had seen how my husband, the lawyer, had argued cases in our home. It was a matter of reasoning, finding some key that would lead the people to justice. I was refused. The commander said no. Never say no to a woman of conscience. I went up the line, and finally to General Meade, and resoundingly, he said no. Well, there's one final officer, and who might that be? The Commander-in-Chief, our father Abraham Lincoln. Now, legend has that I went to Washington, D.C. to plead his case. And while I can say, do you know that at this time we could walk into the Capitol? There was a guard there, but if you were dressed neatly and plainly and you looked civilized, you could walk right in, but you had to wait maybe a few days because he was so busy seeing people, so loaded with cases. Well, I was ushered into this room, and there he sat at a desk, all towering with papers, maps strewn on the floor, a little boy playing in the corner. I was so in awe of our father Abraham that I curtsied like a lady. And he asked me why I was here to see him. And I said, well, and then I composed myself. And I found in my heart the mercy and the compassion for our boys in blue. I would be their angel, their voice. And I said, well, I'm here to plead and to argue, to reason with you, sir, President, Father Abraham, for the innocence of an unjustly accused soldier. You see, they say he deserted his post, but when I talked to him, he really didn't. He had just gone home to see his family. He needed to see his family. We cannot lose one soldier who could fight for the Republic, who could fight for the Union. Maybe he just needed to go home to his family and to see his children or his wife or his mother. And what is your name? And I looked into Abraham Lincoln's eyes, and I saw careworn reason, compassion. I saw a depth of thinking I had never witnessed before in any human being, in any man. And I just calmly said, I think we should plead clemency for this person. He said, I'll write the letter of clemency. We need all the men we can have to fight. And so I did. And so then, well, every camp I went to, that was my path. I would find the ones that were accused of desertion and slated to be drawn before a drumhead court and unjustly accused and convicted and shot or hanged. And I would write my letter of clemency. And then rumor had it that Lincoln would see my handwriting on the letters, and he'd see my signature, and he'd say, oh, that's that husband lady. It got around. I saved 200 men, maybe more. I wish I could have saved more. I wish I could have saved more of my boys in blue. You know, in these camps, we would see the refugees coming up from the south as the plantations would be turned over, or there'd be a battle at a fort, like at Fort Pulaski, when Susie King Taylor, a sister nurse of ours, went to the island of St. Simon, and then went on to become the first black nurse in the Civil War. She went on to become the first black teacher of a free school in the Civil War. She met Clara Barton, my sister nurse. Clara Barton was criticized for doing that because she was a lady of color. But I agreed with Clara Barton. They're our sister nurses, and the color of their blood is the same, because we do shed blood. We do bleed. We get hurt. But we heal, and we go on. And then the last time that my heart broke, it was for joy, because we had won the war, and our father Abraham had kept the Union together, that we would somehow overcome these problems. We would somehow, with our imperfect union, become a better place. We would somehow band together as the nurses and take care of our men, our boys in blue. And I was at the Grand Review in Washington, D.C. when all of a sudden I heard the soldiers, and they were cheering, and it was someone, and they were saying, hooray for mother husband, hooray for mother husband. Me. Thank you. I don't know if we have time or if I...
We have plenty of time for questions.
Yeah, if you'd like to ask some questions. Yes.
What happens to your husband?
Joshua, I actually outlived Joshua. He lived in Philadelphia, and he practiced law as always. He totally agreed with my efforts and felt it was a duty that we all had to serve in some way, and that was his way. And my guess is that he was busy in Philadelphia working with the Union forces, amassing supplies and helping out the nurses. Yeah, because we had a tremendous network. Mm-hmm. No, that's.
I just wondered what the fate was for those who were unable to save.
They were executed. They were shot. Oh yeah. You know, there's accounts of a 15-year-old boy who fell asleep at his field post, and he was just picked up by the commander and put up against a tree and then shot, because it was too much of a risk that the Confederates would get through the line and then destroy the entire camp, killing hundreds of soldiers. So, I mean, it was a very serious offense. But there were many who just deserted because they were exhausted from the carnage of battle and just went home. They were hungry, they were tattered, they were famished, dehydrated. In Brandy Station, there's a book called The Mutiny of Brandy Station. Those men there, they mutinied against their officers because they were forced to march without water or salt or hardtack for more than 100 miles. And they were just dropping dead in the road from heat. You know, they're wearing wool uniforms in the heat of the summer. In fact, if you were to look at Civil War battles, in fact, this one at Fort Stevens, heat and dehydration plays a major factor. Disease plays a major factor. The nurses were there to sort of to take care of the men, to get them well, to heal these wounds. Now, often a man would be finding himself knowing, or a boy would know that he'd be dying, And so he would ask the nurse to come, and then she would sit and write out a note, a letter to the loved ones. All right? And so Louisa May Alcott writes that she didn't have anything to write on, so she used the bottom of a tea kettle to write these notes in pencil or in pen and ink on papers. And then they would be dutifully sent to their families. Now, the badge on my hat is a Third Corps badge. This is a replica from my own research on Mary Moore's husband. And she also sewed a hospital flag with yellow calico, perhaps, and a red flannel bottle on it to signal that her tent was a medical tent where you could get medicine. And okay, so when you say Smoketown Hospital or Camp Letterman, these were massive tent communities, massive large tents holding 10 beds at a time, cots, wooden cots with canvas that you folded and that you loaded. Ambulances were often like two-wheel things pulled by a mule or a horse or by people. So the level of skill of the nurses too was from the very basic, like I just come from home and I know how to take care of my little ones, keeping them from having fever, to the more advanced nurses who were trained in the Florence Nightingale technique, like the Woolsey sisters. Now we know that Georgiana Woolsey with the U.S. Sanitary Commission brought a French valet chef or cook who cooked for her. So I mean there's many levels of activity with the nurses. But they were amazing. And I just owe my daughter's life to a nurse, and so I feel for them, I really do. Yes, is it time? All right, thank you so much.